It says it's connecting, and it says we're live here with Jack TurnBull. Let's
All
give it a
right.
few seconds here to make sure we're good. Oh, I think we're already live now. Let's see here.
Yes, I think we're live. Yes, I think we're live.
Live, sound crystal clear. We are good. I'm gonna turn this off. You should be good on your end too, right, babe? Think so. All right. We're back, Jack. Jack, someone is praying for our demise. They want us to not give the people good information. I think it's the fake news. I think the fake news, they don't want the real news from not safe from ears. And we're not gonna stop. We're not gonna quit. We're gonna give them exactly what they want, right, Jack?
Yes, sir.
Second week back. We're coming out with a 48 hours movie soon, right? That's in the plan, right? Black guy, white guy come together, save the world.
I think it's Ebony and Ivory.
Ebony.
But we have to come up with better superheroes than Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder.
Yeah. So I didn't pick out my superhero the last time. Shit. Black Ninja. That's
Black
like double
Ninja.
entendre, right? It's like
Black Ninja and the Minotaur.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. All right, cool. Jack, we got you back on. We got a few things we're going to touch on. Some things have changed regarding the George Floyd case. Rest in peace. And a few other topics we wanted to bring up. Do you want... And here comes the dog busting in the room. Hey, grab the dog from out the room, babe, with her little dog toy. Do you want to talk about anything beforehand? How's you and the fam? Everybody good?
Everybody's good. Everybody's safe. The kids are bored because summer apparently has been canceled. Everyone's complaining that they're home with their kids. I mean, my kids are teenagers. I could not imagine having toddlers right now.
Jesus. Yeah.
So for all those moms out there, single moms, stay-at-home moms, working moms, the whole shebang.
Dads too. Some single dads out there too.
Stay-at-home dads too with the toddlers. My hat's off to you because I just, I couldn't do it.
At least you can physically choke your kids and not feel too bad, when they're
right. But my problem is my 16-year-old son would probably choke me back now. He's about an inch taller, and he's gaining on me.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe that isn't a good move. All right, Jack, so question number one, we wanted to get into some updates regarding the arrest of the 4 officers related to the George Floyd case.
Yes.
Do we have anything that we can talk about?
We have some updates. The last time we talked, Derek Chauvin, the police officer that kept his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, he was charged with third-degree murder back when we spoke a couple weeks ago. Those charges have since been upgraded to second-degree murder. Okay. The best way to think about this is, at least I'll give you the Maryland perspective. I researched the Minnesota statutes a little bit. First of all, he faces, instead of 30 years for third-degree murder, he faces 40 years. Okay. Now, the 3 other officers have also now been charged with aiding and abetting, and they face up to 10 years in prison for aiding and abetting third-degree murder. Okay. What the new charge is going to require, the old charge you and I talked about, depraved heart murder. I used the example of the kid at the Randallstown football game that he shot into a group and paralyzed one of the guys. And that was an example I used of a depraved heart situation, right. Randomly firing into a crowd, driving your car down a sidewalk. If you killed someone, you may not have specifically intended to kill that person, but you acted with such depravity. You had what the law calls a depraved heart, and you would be convicted of depraved heart second-degree murder. It's basically, the best way to think about this is all murder starts at second-degree murder.
Okay.
If there's an aggravating factor like malice and premeditation, okay, if my wife poisons me tonight, she's obviously premeditated that, okay? Don't get any ideas, honey. That's malice and aforethought. Okay, that takes second-degree murder up to first-degree murder. You can also, instead of aggravating second-degree murder up to first degree, you can mitigate it down, okay, to manslaughter. So the way the case was charged, it was basically charged as an unintentional murder, okay? This, in fact, I think originally, when it was originally charged, looking at the Minnesota statute, it was probably originally charged as a depraved heart murder, that, you know, if someone acted this way with such disregard for human life. Mm-hmm. Now, under the statute, the second-degree murder statute in Minnesota, it still does not require, and I want to pull it up real quick, I have things bookmarked, it still does not require an intent to kill, okay? Mm. Most serious crimes are what we call specific intent crimes, okay? When I steal something from you, I have the specific intent to deprive that from you. Mm. There are also general intent crimes. But basically, what I'm honing in is, and the prosecutor's not going to come on the news and say, here's our theory of the case right now on June 7th of 2020. But reading between the lines, you can find the charging document online, by the way. The statement of charges is online. Okay. But killing a human intentionally without premeditation. This also talks about killing a human while committing or attempting a drive-by shooting, or causing someone's death without intending the death of anyone while committing a felony other than a sex crime. But basically, you know, that would make it up to a first degree murder. So my guess is he was committing a first degree assault, what would be a felony assault in the state of Minnesota. And during the course of committing that felony, the person died. Okay, George Floyd died while he was committing the felony. Now, Maryland has a felony murder rule, okay? If you and I decide we're going to go rob a bank, which is a felony, okay, and you go nuts and shoot the teller, and I'm only waiting in the car, I'm just your getaway driver, I am guilty of felony murder because in the course of committing a felony together, you and I, a person died. Okay, so it would be felony murder. So my guess is this is Minnesota's equivalent of their felony murder rule. So the prosecutor is still not saying, and you know, no one can look into, and this is actually going to come up a little bit later when we talk about, because one of your viewers asked, right, how would I attack this as a defense attorney? How would I attack this as a prosecutor? You know, no one can look into someone's heart because all these types of cases come down to intent. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if this cop intended to kill George Floyd or was so, you know, act with such recklessness and depravity that would be the normal result. You know, there's very few people in the world that are all good and very few people that are all bad. I don't know if this cop intended to kill George Floyd. I don't know if he had some grudge against him. But my educated guess is, my thought process here is that the prosecutor does not believe at this point that he has evidence to show that this officer Chauvin intended specifically to kill George Floyd. Mostly you can infer from the circumstances that while committing a felony, and again, there's also going to be a big question we're going to roll into a little bit later about how I would handle this as a defense attorney, whether this, you know, was he actually committing a felony? Because if he wasn't actually committing a felony, then this second-degree felony murder. I, quite frankly, if I were the prosecutor in this case, and again, we'll hop to this later, I would have charged it as first degree. Down the line, all four of them get charged with first degree, and then we negotiate later. Okay. But that's, you know, neither here nor there. So that's the update, really. You know, the other update is people only have to turn on the news is, you know, the protests that are going on, that are, you know, I've seen you on your personal page. Mm-hmm. You know, I have tried to stay out of, it's funny. Adele Brockmeyer, my partner, she put a post up on our social media on our TurnBull Brockmeyer law page. She put a post up of the lady getting hit by the officer in front of the War Memorial Building down off Fayette. Did you see that?
I did not see that yet. No.
Okay, so what happens is there's this lady who's she's like probably middle-aged lady, and she's going crazy and acting kind of
Belligerent.
doing more than just protesting.
Okay.
She was acting very belligerent, and she struck a cop twice.
And then the cops hit her back?
Yes.
Okay,
and
before you say something, I just talked to a state trooper, and we talked about it, and, I hope no one judged me about this. You can't hit people. You can't hit an officer. Especially, I don't know the whole details of the case, but my initial instinct is like, I would have cracked her back. Now, I understand I'm not a person of the law, and that's not maybe law abiding, but my initial instinct was like, you can't sock somebody twice like that. Not trying to, like, save your own life and resisting arrest maybe, but she cracked him. And she was a big lady. She wasn't a small lady.
No.
She could have
Well,
knocked
the post that Adele put up went viral. We had over 1 million views.
Yeah.
We had people in Queensland, Australia commenting on it. We had people in Baghdad, Iraq commenting on it. And it's funny because typically for anything that's charged at all, and when I say charged, I mean sort of a hot button issue. It's emotionally charged. We do very little commentary on purpose because we want to evoke and encourage commentary.
Right.
Half the people that commented on the post said we were racist for posting it, and then the other half of the people that commented on the post said we were anti-police.
Well, that's good. It's 50-50. It's 50-50.
You can't be both. I mean, I guess you could be both, but it was funny just by posting the video. Right. And I think the headline said, last night on Fayette Street in Baltimore City, half the people said we were awful for posting it because we were, we were racist and didn't believe in the movement, which we very much do, of, equality. And then the other half of the people, without any comment of our own, said that we were anti-police and that the lady got what she deserved. Well, I mean, most reasonable people kind of sound like you do, Nick. I mean, they sort of came down in the middle. Like, she was there for the right reason, but then she acted badly. She hit a police officer twice in the face. If I did that, I would expect another officer to come up and take me down. I don't know if you do.
Can't punch me. Someone can't punch me twice in the face. So no, I mean, listen, everyone's emotionally charged. There are real systemic issues going on within this country, within the world, within the human race. But you can't just punch somebody twice in the face. And I talked to state troopers, white and black, Asian, and they all kind of echoed the same thing. You just can't do that. Now, if you find yourself, in my opinion, not my professional opinion, but when you're trying to save your own life for the life of someone else, which I don't think that was the circumstances. Maybe it's a little gray area, and then maybe you still legally have to face some charges, but it's more justifiable. They were trying to choke you out. You felt like your child was being, but they were trying to apprehend you. You acting like a crazy person. I didn't see the whole clip. I don't know what's going on as far as the entire context. And you crack, and it was good 2 cracks. I'm a puncher. I know how to punch. Those were 2 good punches. So I'm telling you, maybe I'd have lost my job, but I would have punched her back. But I'm a bad person at times, so maybe.
It's funny. Maryland is one of the few states left where you actually have a right to resist an unlawful arrest.
Okay.
But to win in court, you better be able to show that arrest was unlawful.
And what does resist mean? Like pull away, or you can fight?
I mean, resisting is another gray area of the law. I mean, I've had clients charged with just barely pulling away. Mm-hmm. And I've had clients like stand back and, go all Jackie Chan on the cops. And, that's, the holy trinity of assault, resisting, disorderly conduct. Right. And, resisting arrest is, you sort of know it when you see it. Body camera footage has really helped us a lot because I think a lot of resisting arrest charges aren't charged anymore because, someone tenses up or gets a little stiff or gets nervous or falls to the ground, they used to charge it as resisting arrest.
Wow.
So.
All right. So those are the updates regarding Derek. How do you pronounce his last name? Chauvin?
Chauvin,
Chauvin.
Chauvin.
The other three who are abetting, right? What was the actual charge?
Aiding and abetting, second-degree murder.
What's the chances of this sticking? Like, is that, I guess, due to the protests and the increased visibility of the case, the prosecutor or the DA was forced to, like, how does that work? Because I know at one time they weren't charged with anything, and now they're charged with it.
Well, I mean, I guess the argument could be made easily that they had the power to stop him from what he was doing. That is a very different question than whether they aided and abetted and assisted him in some way to commit this homicide. I mean, I think they're all terrible people. I think they all should never be able to carry a gun and a badge again.
At least, yeah.
And I think they should have a stain on their lives for the rest of their lives, being known as one of the people that watched George Floyd die and stood by and did nothing. That's not the question, though. The question is, did they aid, did they abet, did they assist in some way that allowed him to carry out the crime? I mean, I used the example earlier, if I'm the getaway driver of a robbery,
right.
I don't even go in the bank. I don't get the bags, the gloves, the zip ties, nothing, okay? All I'm doing is sitting outside in the car. I am clearly aiding and abetting you and assisting you in some way to rob that bank. You know, as a defense attorney, let's put it this way, I would feel much more comfortable representing one of them than I would Derek Chauvin, because I just don't know that that the prosecution's going to be able to show that they had the intent to assist him or aid and abet. Again, it's not a question of whether they're terrible human beings, whether they had the power to stop this in its tracks and to keep George Floyd alive. No question, all those things are true. The question is, can the state meet its burden beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty that that they actually assisted him? So I think the jury, you know, to use a bad euphemism, the jury is out on that unless some other evidence comes up. I'm not real confident that they're going to be able to prove that.
Right. We flirted with the topic regarding the prosecutor versus defense angle. We're going to jump right into that, but we're going to shout out a buddy of mine, a young guy, Wade Rose, and he had a few questions that we kind of also touched on, but we'll wrap them up in a nice, pretty bow and bun. Number one being, how will Minnesota state law uniquely affect the prosecution of these four officers, especially Mr. Chauvin, I forgot his name already, compared to Maryland law? So the unique differences of how we would maybe go about this case from the prosecution angle, I guess.
We kind of touched on that on the front end. One of the interesting things about Minnesota law, there's sort of a tier. Again, go back to all murder starts at second-degree murder. You can aggravate up to first degree with premeditation, malice, a forethought. You know, the best example is poisoning someone or laying in wait for them. That jacks it up to first-degree murder. And then you can mitigate down to manslaughter, both intentional and unintentional manslaughter. This third-degree murder is basically a tier in Minnesota law between second-degree and manslaughter. And it sort of has these special circumstances. Again, I can go back to the statute, but what the third-degree murder covers is special circumstances of killing a human intentionally, but not killing them intentionally. The depraved heart murder is the third-degree murder. Again, it's very difficult to go inside of someone's mindset, but this third-degree murder is, I think, a dead-up slam dunk under the depraved heart theory, that he acted with such reckless disregard that imminent death was, you know, the likely result, and disregard for human life. I don't know if this the second-degree murder. It's not a manslaughter case. It's not an unintentional murder. Minnesota has basically found a middle ground that Maryland doesn't have between manslaughter and second degree. So Yes, and that would be the third degree, which is the depraved heart murder. I think that's a slam dunk. That would be a 30-year sentence. The second degree would be a 40-year sentence. Again, the no premeditation, but it's an intentional killing, drive-by shooting, and also the commission of a murder while committing a felony also constitute that second degree murder. Right. So again, you and I going into the bank. So it is somewhat, I don't want to use the word unique. It's just different from Maryland law. Under Maryland law, I think he also would be charged with second degree murder as well. I think felony murder could fit the bill. But we're going to have to see how this plays out. One of the interesting things about the case is, and we can kind of dovetail this into the question of how we would handle this either by a defense lawyer or a prosecutor.
Yeah, let's jump right into
that. One of the things that always comes up in police misconduct cases, whether the police officer assaulted you or whether he kills you, okay, it runs the full gamut, is training, okay? Was the tactic that was used that resulted in the death, and you and I touched on this a little bit before, was the tactic an approved tactic? If I use some crazy mixed martial arts sleeper hold on you and you die, that's not part of my normal police training and protocol, the prosecutor is going to attack that significantly, okay? There is some discussion that Minnesota police officers, particularly Minneapolis police officers, were trained in, and I think that this is going to come out at trial, that this was although not widely accepted, it was a tactic that was used and taught to police officers in Minnesota on how to subdue and keep control of a subject by putting your knee on their neck. So the defense is going to use that as, look, he was using this normally accepted tactic and protocol in keeping Mr. Floyd from moving. This was part of his training. What does that do? That negates intent, okay? The defense attorney is going to be trying to negate intent. There was no intent. This is a manslaughter case. This is an unintentional manslaughter case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You're going to hear from an expert witness who's going to come in and testify that this was an accepted training technique and tactic used in the field by Minneapolis police officers. Officer Chauvin was taught this technique. Other officers used this technique. It's been used in the past without killing people, and Officer Chauvin could have never foreseen that death would have resulted in this. What's that translate to? It translates into an unintentional manslaughter variety of homicide, and it would reduce his sentence significantly. I was the state's attorney, on the other hand, I would focus in on 9 minutes or 8 minutes and 43 seconds. I would nail every witness I could who testified for the defense that this was a normal and accepted tactic and police procedure. I would say, well, is it a normal and accepted police tactic and police procedure to keep that knee there for 8 minutes and 43 seconds? Right. I would even use that in court. I'd say, okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, everyone in the courtroom, we're going to sit here for 8 minutes and 43 seconds and hold our breath.
Ooh,
see how long
CSI
you can get.
Shit you're doing here.
Yeah,
I like this.
I mean, most people can't hold their breath even 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And he was deprived oxygen for 8 minutes and 43 seconds. Any reasonable person would know that even if this is an accepted tactic, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, doing it for 8 minutes and 43 seconds, that negates their argument that there was no intent. Because once you do it for more than a minute or so, you know that the intended result could be, I mean, this is going to be like a crazy case. I mean, like court TV. I mean, this is going to be like OJ, I think. I think this is going to be a bellwether case for police training, police brutality, police tactics. This is going to be, I'm actually scared for our country what this trial is going to do.
Oh my God.
To the country. I think it's going to make OJ and Rodney King look like kindergarten. Social media is, going to be at the forefront of this case. More so than any trial that, in recent memory.
Yeah, we didn't have that in those days. Yeah.
No, we weren't tweeting about the OJ case. We weren't Instagramming about the Rodney King case. So I'm actually quite scared that it's going to continue to divide the country. I don't think any right-thinking human being could possibly think that what this officer did was okay. I have clients all the time that tell me, the police took, $50 from me, or the police officer spit on me. Well, like, one of the great equalizers has been body camera footage, because these police officers know they're being recorded. I mean, this guy knew he was being recorded, and he still kept his knee on the guy's neck for 8 minutes and 43. I keep saying 8:43. I'm pretty sure that that's what it is, or 8:47. Whatever it is, it was about 8 minutes too long.
Right.
So, if I was a state's attorney, I would be focusing on the time that passed and what a reasonable person would think would be the consequences. Forget reasonable police officer. Any reasonable human being, anyone above the age of 12, could probably figure out what would happen if you kept your knee on somebody's neck for almost 9 minutes.
Right. Does it also, do you take into account the fact that the man who was apprehended, George Floyd, was also vocalizing that he cannot breathe, and then maybe
absolutely,
because then he can't say it was just me and him in a dark alley. I was struggling, fighting for my life, and I was maybe the adrenaline and it was pumping, and I was just trying to hold him down until reinforcements came. It's like, no, you were smiling or smirking in the camera. People were talking to you. You were just, it wasn't like you didn't have any kind of clue that maybe what I'm doing isn't the correct path for these, next few minutes.
It was like that little red light in his head never went off.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, this was like practically live streamed. I mean, it was sort of this close to being live streamed on Facebook. He had, bystanders there saying, yo, man, he can't breathe. You have him saying, I can't breathe. And it's just like, the callous. You're right, and he had this shitty look on his face.
Yeah,
he just looks like an asshole. I mean, like, just the look on his face. I'm sure if he could go back and take it back, he could, but unfortunately, there's some things in this world you just can't take back. And when someone loses their life, there's got to be consequences.
Right. So, perfect segue. Number one, thank you, Wade. Raid Rose, who gave us that question. It was very good questions, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Number three, what legal rights do we have to protest or protect ourselves from police brutality, corrupt officers specifically, right? While it's actually happening. Walking that thin line of resisting arrest versus trying to save your own life or the life of another one by intervening. So if it was myself and I'm feeling like, hey, this guy is going to kill me, or if I'm witness to a situation where I feel like, hey, they're doing more than just apprehending a suspect. I think this is going to end up, rest in peace, a George Floyd situation, and I'm just a citizen. How can I legally intervene? So how can I legally protect myself but not put myself in worse dangers as far as the law, or how can I legally intervene to protect someone else?
Okay, a lot to unpack in that question.
Yes.
Number one, as far as your right to protest, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution gives us the absolute right to gather and to protest. Okay, I have my First Amendment freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Okay, so you do have a right to protest. Now, as I learned in constitutional law, there are limits on that free speech. The example they always used in law school was you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Okay, that's not free speech. So the government can curtail under what we call time, place, and manner. That you can exercise your First Amendment rights and your right to assembly, but the government can put reasonable limitations on that based on what we call time, place, and manner. Okay. One of the big things right now is curfews. So the government, if the government has a compelling government interest to intrude upon or snuff out your First Amendment rights and your right to assembly and your right to free speech, they can't completely do it, but they can put some limitations on it to protect the greater good. Okay, so but that is an absolutely protected right, and the government has to show a compelling government interest in order to infringe upon that right. So your right to protest, your right to assembly is pretty straightforward, okay? As a practical matter, as long as you're not like tearing the place up, you can protest, okay? You don't even really need a permit to protest. I guess it would depend on local ordinances, but I guess in some areas to protest in certain places, you may need a permit. Or some kind of gathering permit. But as a general rule for what's going on right now, I mean, I can only apply it to what's going on right now. Other than curfews, and place is also a consideration there. You know, they're not going to let you protest inside City Hall in Baltimore City, so they can put a restriction on the place. They can say, hey, look, you can stand out in War Memorial Plaza. And you can do it until 8 o'clock at night, but then we're going to have a curfew. So in that example, they're restricting the time and the place, and then even manner. If the manner of the protest, if someone says, well, I want to protest and exercise my First Amendment right by burning a flag, that might be okay. No matter how you feel about flag burning, it's protected under the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But if you say, I want to protest by burning all the trees that encircle War Memorial Plaza, well, no, that manner of protest would be prohibited. So, you know, typically you sort of know when you see it, what's okay to do and what's not to do when you protest. You can't smash out the window of Walgreens. You can't, damage buildings, because that is not, the government has a compelling government interest to protect businesses and curtail that sort of protest. I really actually want to give Baltimore sort of a pat on the back, because we got a serious black eye after Freddie Gray. People were pissed, rightly so, and people are pissed now, rightly so. But Baltimore, it's almost like we grew up a little bit after Freddie Gray. Like in Freddie Gray, we were sort of like in junior high school, and we learned a few things about like how to like conduct ourselves. And now I know there's been some damage to buildings. I'm not saying there hasn't been. Everything's been hunky-dory and completely peaceful. I know that some buildings downtown were damaged and some glass was smashed. But compared to what's going on in other cities, like we sort of protested like adults, for lack of a better term. And I also think we didn't have a lot of agitators.
That's another thing too, those provocateurs outside people.
Agitators, paid agitators.
Right.
Those people exist, whether you think they do or not. So. And what's that?
I was saying very much so, yes. Video evidence out there. Yep.
Right. And I think that a lot of other bigger cities saw that. I know Portland, it was a humongous problem. I think in your bigger cities, you have this sort of radical fascist or anti-fascist group that, they just want mayhem and chaos and anarchy. Right. And I don't think that's what Black Lives Matter wants. I don't think that's what the police unions want. And I don't think that's what the soccer moms, the rocket scientists, and the lawyers want either. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't think anyone really wants that. What they want is a level playing field in the workplace, in the classroom, on the street. It actually really impacted me this week. A woman who I'm on the Baltimore County Bar Association with, she's African-American. She's about 10 years younger than me. Super nice lady. And she lives outside DC, I think Rockville. And she put a post on Facebook. She said, when my husband goes jogging, she's like, we live in a great neighborhood. She's like, when my husband goes jogging or my son rides his bike up and down the street, there's always, she's like, even though we live in a good neighborhood, there's always this little thing in the back of my mind that if there is police interaction, how's it going to go? And that, like, more than any of this, more than seeing the buildings burn, more than seeing the videos, more than listening to the speeches, like that, like hit home for me, like big time. Like no one should have to live that way.
Just to have that thought.
Right. Just the fact, she's like, it's always in the back of my mind when my 12-year-old says I'm going to ride my bike over to a friend's house. I know it's only a half a mile away, but just what would happen if there were police interaction?
Right.
Sort of the big question here too is that was asked is, if I see police interacting with another protester, or it doesn't even have to be a protester. Let's say, you are at a traffic light and there's a police officer that has someone pulled over on the side of the road, and the police officer's got his knee on his neck or is beating the hell out of him. Right. As a private citizen, can I intervene? The answer is yes, you can, but you better be right. You better be correct, because the police are all going to, that thin blue line is even though it's a blue line, it's tight, and the police are all going to sort of, they're going to back each other up just like suspects back each other up. The situation is that if you do, resist arrest or assist someone in a resisting arrest, it's got to be, you better be right, because you're going to be sitting in a courtroom one day,
having to explain it.
Having to explain yourself.
So, should I not physically intervene? Should I bring awareness to the situation? Should I make sure I'm recording it at all times, or can I physically intervene? Because how would I know if I'm right? If that person just may have done something that's a crime, but I feel like the way they're being apprehended doesn't fit. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't rob a bank and kill 10 people. They tried to steal lotion out of Rite Aids and sell it on the train. But now they're getting jacked up. Should I not physically intervene and maybe just make people aware in my vicinity that something's going on and record it? Is that as far as that should go legally?
That's probably what I would do, is just record it and keep my distance. Because, at the end of the day, you put yourself at risk when you intervene in an arrest. You don't know what preceded the arrest. You don't know how that, you're condensing down a big, you're condensing down to a minute of your observation, a judgment call as to whether or not you should be intervening in an arrest. I just think it's a bad idea. I mean, I guess if it's life or death and that survival instinct takes over and you feel like you've got to assist that person, you have a right to help someone. It's called defense of others. I always use the example, if a client walks into my office and I'm standing hitting my secretary with don't
do that, by the way.
Stick, we'll go to the movie and game Clue. If I'm hitting her with the candlestick in the lobby, they could tackle me and exercise her right to self-defense that she's not exercising. It's called defense of others. But you're opening up a serious can of worms by intervening in an arrest of a suspect, especially something where you may not know what's going on. The person could be armed and dangerous, and there's a lot of information that could come to light that shows you were dead wrong for intervening in the situation.
Now, what if I'm that person and I'm cuffed and the knee's on my neck, but I feel like I'm gonna die in a minute, and maybe it's just me and that officer? Can I shimmy my way out and run, or how does that work?
Well, in Maryland, you do have a right to resist an unlawful arrest. Okay. And again, you better be right. Yeah. Certainly, you have a right to exercise self-defense. Your response to the threat must be reasonable. If I have a client that's calling the office every week and saying to me, you did a terrible job in my case, although that would never happen. But if one client did decide I did a terrible job in his case and he's threatening to beat me up, and I walk out the back door of my office and he's standing there at 7 o'clock at night and he takes a swing at me, I have a right to exercise self-defense and repel his attack. If, however, let's say he's standing in the parking lot and he's 50 feet from me and he says, I've been waiting for this day, put up your dukes, and I pull out a gun and shoot him from 50 feet away, that's not reasonable. So your right to self-defense can be exercised, but your response to the threat must be reasonable. Make sense?
It does make sense. So if maybe I was being arrested and it was a choke, I can use my physical being to get myself out of the choke, but I couldn't pull a knife out of my pocket and start stabbing him in his forearm.
Perfect. Yes. That's
now. What if
example.
He's trying to choke me, has a gun in my head? We're gonna go really like movies on this, right? So
right.
He has the gun in my head. I get out of the choke and I take the gun out of his hand. I don't shoot him, but I'm like, listen, man, I don't. That scares me even thinking about it. But like, you can't do that, and I'll put the gun down once people are here to witness it. But and hopefully the body cam is actually catching all this, because then it's the blue versus what I'm saying, and I'm really fucked
right.
up. But is that, like he has a gun in my head? He's doing some. What was that movie with Denzel when he was the corrupt police officer in L.A.? What was that movie? Damn it.
I don't know.
Oh, it was good. He was like a detective not Inside Man. Anyway,
I'll think of it.
I'm thinking of the worst case scenarios in which, like,
training day.
Like if it's like a training day situation, and I'm using the weapon against him or her that was used against me in this unlawful arrest. Am I able to remove the weapon from him and maybe point it back at him until other officers are there to, stop the situation? Am I able to shoot that person if I feel like it's still impending danger? Give me the answers. Give me all the answers.
It depends on the circumstances. The problem is your response reasonable? Are you going to be able to argue to a jury later that I believed and I had a reasonable belief that my life was in danger and that I act reasonably under the circumstances to repel that threat? That's really the question. So, again, there are very few bright line rules in the law. So it's difficult to say that under your example, could it be reasonable? Yes. Could it also be unreasonable? Right. Yes. It's just, the answer is it all depends, unfortunately.
Right. Well, yeah, it's a great movie, by the way. If they haven't seen Training Day with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke, I believe, was in it. I may watch it again. Solid movie. Great movie. I think that wraps it up for all the questions we have, or I have for you, Jack. Anything that you want to?
No, any trick questions you want to throw my way?
Let's see. You know what? Fuck, I should have thought of a trick question. Every time we come, I should have one. So let's think of something here. Yeah, all right, cool. This is what we're gonna do.
I'm gonna be throwing geometry or isosceles triangles at you or something. If you're gonna start asking me trick questions, I'm gonna ask you computer programming questions.
For the record, I'm not a computer programmer. Software engineer, I guess maybe they wouldn't say. And I am not a rocket science, despite what Jack says. I get paid to do a job that I can barely do well, according to my boss. No, but okay. So check this out. You're in the court, and you guys are. Is it litigating? Is that the word you would use?
Yeah, trying a case, litigating case.
So then you catch the prosecutor at the water cooler, and he says something to you, and he pushes you. What can you do back? Can you push him back?
Sure. I probably would. I actually had, and my wife Adele is someone that can take care of herself. She's no shrinking violet. Well, an attorney who I've known him for years. He got in her face and was almost to the point of coming up on her and pushing up against her, yelling at her. And I happened to be in court upstairs in a different courtroom. And I went downstairs and I said some rather
colorful things,
unkind things to him. And he said, "Are you threatening me?" I said, "I am absolutely threatening you." I'm
Oh,
like,
okay.
"You ever touch?" And Adele is not, like I said, someone that needs to be defended. She can handle herself, but like it just struck a nerve in me. So, I mean, you don't get too many tense moments or Perry Mason moments very often in the courtroom. Adele had a case about 6 months ago in Baltimore County where a witness was like testifying, and he got up from the witness stand, and his answers were like very robotic. And he got up from the witness stand, and a piece of paper fell, like she just caught it out of the corner of her eye, and a piece of paper fell either from his pocket or from his lap. And she goes, "Wait a minute, what was that?" And he's like, "What was what?" And she's like, "That piece of paper that just fell." He had been in the bathroom, and the lawyer on the other side had told him everything to say, and he had written it on paper towels, those thick ply paper towels, like they're almost like sandpaper in public bathrooms. He had written out what the other side wanted him to say while he was testifying on the paper towel. And she picked it up, she read it, she showed it to the judge, she admitted it into evidence. And that's as close as you get sometimes to a Perry Mason moment. But
shit.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. When we have her on in the future, we'll talk about that again. That's funny.
We'll have a COVID quarantine divorce special. One afternoon.
Yeah, because I know couples are going crazy and people want to get divorced right about now because they're spending the most time they've ever spent with their significant other. So you guys are going to be getting a lot of those cases soon. So we can definitely talk about that and have some fun with it.
I hear you. I hope I've been able to shed some light on some of this. This is like a no-win situation for our country. Things have got to change. The legalities of it are one thing, and whatever's going to happen to Officer Chauvin's going to happen. But I'm just scared of like the ripple effects. I feel like we're just starting to feel it, and we do need change, and there do need to be ripples. But I don't want those ripples to completely drown us. You know what I mean?
Of course, I 100% agree with you, and I think we can't control how everyone reacts or even how they feel to certain situations or circumstances. But I think interactions like this between you and I, and us putting it out there, are examples of what we need to do. Separating the emotional response from the facts, because I think sometimes people are so emotionally charged when they don't comb through the details and the outcome is surprising to them, then it exacerbates the issue. I think it definitely has to be like a knowledge base increasing, between all of us, and more importantly, just love, man, and empathy of each other in the situation. Because ignorance is not a negative thing as far as like you're ignorant, but you just may not know how other people are disseminating information or how they feel, cultural backgrounds, all the things that you have to take into account. So I think us doing this on a regular basis, trying to feed people the facts, but also show that we can have a rapport, disagree when we have to, agree when we have to, for a better cause, for humanity, I think is important. And then we curse in between and talk about superhero shit.
Right.
And, all that other good stuff.
I hear you, buddy. It was great talking to you today. Let's keep in touch and keep up to speed on this thing the best we can.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to smack the shit out of an old lady at Walmart and say, Jack's my lawyer.
Spread some bleach,
Bleach party. Thank you, Jack. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. Have a good afternoon.
Where can they reach you if they want to reach you?
Oh, if anyone needs to reach us, we kind of like to think of ourselves as like the family lawyer, that if we aren't the person that can handle your case, we know who the person is you should go see. But we do civil litigation, medical malpractice, car accidents, workers' comp. Adele is a very experienced and sought after family law litigator, divorce, custody, stuff like that. The best way to get us is call the office, 410-321-8860, or we're in the book. Just Google Jack TurnBull or John TurnBull, or Adele Brockmeyer, Towson, and we're in the book. You can find us easy.
Hey, Jack, if you got any commercials, send them to me. I want to share them on all the pages. It could be, I don't know, a minute, 3 minutes, whatever. I want to put them up and show people.
Okay, cool, man.
Thank you, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, enjoy your Sunday, pal.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, y'all.